In today's incredibly turbulent world, companies are constantly being forced to pivot, on a dime.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a new market challenge or a sudden shift in what customers want or, an unexpected downturn.
Yeah.
But how do you know what move to make when your bottom line is suddenly threatened or when the ground just feels like it's shifting beneath your feet?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a challenge faced by organizations of, well, all sizes. And it's precisely why we're diving deep today
Uh,
into this innovative framework. It's called rapid transformation.
Rapid transformation. Okay.
Yeah, this system, developed by CEO Ali Davachi, it isn't just about surviving change. It's more proactive. It's about creating positive, profitable transformation.
Right.
And it's built on decades of his experience turning companies around,
Hmm.
helping them face new challenges, and maybe most importantly, avoiding those common recurring obstacles that just derail so many efforts.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is pretty simple then. We want to unpack this rapid system, pull out the most impactful insights from Ellie Davachi's book, Rapid Transformation, an outcomes-based approach to drive results.
Exactly.
We're going to try and show you how to identify the right moves for, meaningful transformation, whether you're a business leader tackling these big shifts or maybe just navigating change in your own life.
There's definitely relevance there.
Yeah, get ready for some surprising aha moments. We think you'll feel really well informed by the end.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the elephant in the room. Why do so many companies struggle to change? Even when it's glaringly obvious they need to, it feels almost counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Often it boils down to something the Harvard Business Review famously called active inertia.
Active inertia.
Yeah, it's this powerful tendency for organizations to just persist in established patterns, even as the world around them shifts dramatically.
Yeah.
They essentially just accelerate what worked in the past.
So they double down on the old ways.
Exactly. Inadvertently digging themselves deeper into a hole instead of, adapting.
And what's really interesting is how this active inertia breaks down. It shows up in 4 specific traps. First one, strategic blindness.
Ah, yes.
Companies get incredibly successful with a specific strategic frame that's like their core understanding of the market, how they compete. But then they fail to adapt it. Think about AOL.
Oh, yeah. Classic example.
Media fixed success with dial-up, right? But they completely cratered when broadband became popular. Why? Because they couldn't shift that core strategic frame. They were stuck.
And the powerful takeaway there is that past success, it can actually become your biggest blind spot. It's paradoxical, isn't it?
Totally.
If you cling too tightly to what worked yesterday, you might completely miss what's needed tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the second trap is hardened processes.
Mm-hmm.
This means rigidly relying on familiar ways of doing things, even long after they've stopped being effective, like the historic corporate paranoia around remote working.
Oh, definitely.
Despite clear signs of its potential, it was resisted for decades, preventing companies from embracing a more flexible, maybe more efficient future sooner.
And third, you have limiting relationships.
Right.
Productive relationships that once really fueled growth can actually become handcuffs if they stop you from evolving when you need to.
Yeah.
Look at the Hallmark Channel.
Interesting. How so?
Well, they clung really tightly to their traditional Christmas movie model, and that led to backlash when society started demanding more diversity.
Oh.
That resistance, probably driven by fear of alienating their core viewers, ultimately resulted in a CEO change. The insight is that true loyalty, sometimes, means adapting to new demands, even if it feels, well, uncomfortable.
And the last one.
Dogmatic values. This is when management values harden into these really inflexible beliefs. Makes necessary evolution almost impossible.
So if we connect all this, these 4 traps, the underlying disease behind them, it seems, is often just fear.
That's right. Fear. It can keep people and whole companies trapped in what Davachi calls a toxic bubble, endlessly reinforcing what brought them past success instead of looking forward and embracing the change they need. It's a very human response.
But dangerous for business.
Exactly. Very dangerous.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Let's talk examples. Kodak.
Oh, Kodak.
Believe it or not, they invented the digital camera way back in 1975.
It's incredible, isn't it?
But they dropped it. They shelved the product, terrified it would threaten their huge film business.
Their cash cow.
Exactly. Fast forward, they declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2012. They only survived by selling off their digital camera patents.
The very thing.
The very thing that could have guaranteed their future. And then there's Blockbuster.
Another classic.
So focused on collecting those annoying late fees.
Oh, I remember those.
Well, Netflix just completely changed the game. Made rentals easier, more convenient. Neither Kodak nor Blockbuster seriously entertained the possibility they'd be left behind if they didn't serve the customer in a completely new way.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do you possibly break out of that fear-driven bubble when inertia is just so strong?
Yeah.
And this is precisely where the rapid system offers a powerful answer.
Okay, so let's talk about Ali Davachi and his approach. He introduces this cut-to-the-chase philosophy. You see it in his company, RealWare.
Mm-hmm.
They focus on helping businesses spot problems and grab new opportunities, but without these huge sales and marketing teams, they thrive purely on referrals.
Which tells you a lot, right? People are referring you, you must be doing something right.
Exactly. They've even made the Inc. 5,000 list twice.
And what's really effective about Davachi's approach is how he deliberately avoids what he calls the butcher method. You know, just coming in and slashing resources.
Right, the slash and burn.
Yeah, that often cripples the company long term. Instead, he focuses on a systematic process. He saw this critical need way back in 1999. Major consulting firms, they wouldn't even look at small or mid-sized businesses then.
Because of budget constraints.
Exactly. Left him kind of stranded without expert guidance in a world that was getting more and more complex.
Okay, so let's dive into the core of it then. The RAPID system. It's an acronym, right?
It is. RAPID. Research, analyze, plan, implement, and decide.
Research, analyze, plan, implement, decide.
Got it? And it's not a one-time fix?
No, not at all. It's fluid. It's a constantly moving process designed for continuous improvement. Think of it like a self-correcting loop.
Okay, let's break it down. First up, phase 1. Research the more you know.
Right.
This sounds like the reconnaissance mission. Or maybe a detective gathering clues. That's a good way to put it. It's the information collection phase. All about understanding how a problem developed, what the current issues really are, and how people are currently approaching it. And Davachi really emphasizes this needs to be unemotional, methodical, completely objective.
No jumping to conclusions.
None. A critical part of this research phase is what he calls the reconnaissance stage. This is where you passively gather data, observing, asking open-ended questions.
So not leading questions.
Definitely not. For instance, if a software company is having development issues, you don't ask, is the code buggy? Yes or no. Instead, you ask, why do we seem to be seeing these recurring delays? You watch how teams interact from leadership down to individual contributors, really trying to get to the root cause.
I found Davachi's story about one client really fascinating here. This company was, as he put it, on fire internally. Overwhelming problems.
Right.
But they had one crucial, very unhappy customer who represented most of their revenue.
High stakes.
Totally. Davachi ignored all the tempting internal stuff at first, HR issues, tech debt, whatever. He focused only on those specific customer complaints.
Laser focus.
Exactly. And what he found was that small, targeted fixes, like addressing specific feature requests or performance issues the customer cared about, had a surprisingly huge impact.
Interesting.
Not just for the customer, but it also helped restore confidence internally. It's about finding that 1 degree of change, as he calls it, that creates momentum.
And it's also fundamentally about building trust. Davachi explains when he talks to employees, he first asks a technical question, something to acknowledge their expertise.
Shows respect.
Precisely. Then, and this is key, he asks, so what's keeping you from solving the problem? That often uncovers the real internal obstacles, maybe a rigid top-down culture or just a chronic lack of resources. He stresses validating inputs, watching body language, treating everyone from the CEO down to the help desk with absolute respect. That's how you build trust.
So the research phase wraps up with the review stage.
That's right. This is where all that information you've gathered gets sorted into 2 buckets. Areas of friction, what's holding the company back, maybe processes that exist just because they've always existed.
Bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake.
Exactly. And the other bucket, areas of value creation, what genuinely moves the company forward.
Okay.
Davachi shares this great example. A company spending $100,000 a month on some platform that was generating 0 revenue.
Ouch.
Big ouch. His review led to a recommendation for a new platform. Cost $300,000 up front.
Sounds like a big investment.
It does, but listen to this.
Yeah.
That new platform not only generated an additional $700,000 in revenue, It also saved them $1.2 million annually in operating costs.
Wow.
It's a really vivid illustration of how a thorough, objective review can just unlock massive value.
Okay, so once you've gathered all that crucial info in the research phase, the next step is making sense of it. That brings us to phase 2. Analyze weighing risks and rewards.
Right, and Davachi warns against theorizing before you have the data. He quotes Sherlock Holmes, actually. Yeah, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data.
I like that.
Me too. It's about applying your experience and expertise to the facts you've gathered to figure out the best outcome, not twisting facts to fit some idea you already had.
Right, avoiding confirmation bias.
Exactly. And this is where the creativity really comes in. Davachi tells this powerful story. A client asked him to bid on a specific project, but his analysis showed that what they were asking for wouldn't solve their real underlying problem.
So what did he do?
He boldly told them, "Our proposal doesn't include your project." Then, right there, he pitched what they actually needed. Completely redefined the problem and the outcomes they should be aiming for.
Gutsy move.
Very. But he won the business, and the client was thrilled in the end. It shows that real analysis isn't just crunching numbers. It's about seeing beyond the surface request.
Okay, so the analyze phase typically looks at 4 key areas: people, finance, product, and technology.
That's the typical breakdown, yes.
Yeah.
People's analysis is about going beyond just job titles to find the real skill gaps. Like maybe spotting a lack of QA people in a tech team,
Quality assurance, yeah.
or maybe an unbalanced warehouse staff, too many pickers, not enough packers, that kind of thing. Financial analysis, he says, is mainly done when a company is at serious risk of failing, comparing how resources are allocated to actual customer results. Is the money being spent effectively?
Makes sense.
Then product analysis. This is crucial for companies building tech, looking not just at architectural flaws, but those really important non-functional areas.
Like what?
Things like security, scalability, can it grow? Reliability, does it crash? Performance, is it fast? Overlooking these is like, I don't know, building a beautiful house on a shaky foundation.
Gotcha. And the last one, technology.
Technology analysis.
Yeah.
Looking at the internal tech systems. Davachi mentioned a case where the CRM system wasn't connected to sales and shipping.
So customer service couldn't see what was happening.
Exactly. They couldn't give live updates, created massive friction, and really frustrated customers.
I can imagine.
So this whole analysis phase leads to a clear, actionable presentation. And Davachi makes a point. Share it ideally with everyone involved at the client all at once.
Not just top leadership.
No. To foster immediate engagement and buy-in from the ground up. Avoid that slow trickle down.
Okay, that makes sense. This brings us to the PID flywheel. Plan, implement, decide. This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
This is absolutely it. And these 3 phases, they're not linear. It's not plan, then implement, then decide, done. They create this continuous flywheel.
The flywheel, constantly spinning.
Exactly. Constantly processing information, tweaking the approach, observing results. It's a dynamic, iterative, always improving itself.
Okay, so let's break down the PID. First, plan.
The plan phase is about engineering the change, creating a viable path forward, and it has to address people, processes, and products all at the same time.
Simultaneously.
Yeah, because they're interconnected. For people, it's about fixing skills gaps. Davachi says that's actually the easier part.
Really?
Yeah, the harder part is tackling the company culture. Especially in rigid, top-down places, culture can just stifle inventiveness. For processes, it's about connecting those intertwined departments, like that CRM example, ensuring consistent, dependable data flows where it needs to.
And how does Davachi prioritize what to tackle first in the plan?
Good question. He looks at 2 things. First, which plan will have the most positive impact on the business and, crucially, the customer, regardless of initial cost or time.
Good. Biggest impact.
Second, which plan is easiest to execute, represents the low-hanging fruit.
Ah, the quick wins.
Right. And where those 2 things align, biggest impact and easiest execution, that's where you start. It's a really practical way to build momentum and get some early wins.
Makes sense. Okay, next in the flywheel, implement.
The implement phase. This is all about taking effective action. And Davachi stresses the absolute importance of getting the necessary resources lined up before you start.
Sounds obvious, but I guess it gets missed.
Oh, definitely. He shares this painful story. A team working crazy hours, late nights, weekends, totally dedicated. They get right to the finish line.
Yeah.
And they get stopped dead because senior leadership failed to get the necessary software licenses in time.
Oh, no.
Morale just plummeted, sank like a stone. It shows how a lack of resources or just Failing to anticipate them can kill even the best efforts in the most motivated teams.
Wow. Okay, and the final part of the flywheel, decide.
The decide phase. This is about assessment. Is the plan actually working? It's the critical point where you ask, should we stay the course? Should we change what we're doing? Or should we just stop this altogether?
This sounds like where things can go wrong, even if the other steps were okay.
Absolutely. And the new Coke story is the perfect, if painful, example here.
New Coke, right.
Coca-Cola meticulously researched, analyzed, and planned to counter Pepsi's gains. The product rollout, the implementation was technically perfect,
Yeah.
flawless, but they failed spectacularly in the decide phase. They completely underestimated the public's deep emotional attachment to the original formula.
They missed the human element.
Totally. They had all the data on taste tests, but missed the feeling. They eventually had to pivot back, bring back classic Coke. It proves that even with perfect data and execution, you can miss something crucial, something intangible. It's not just about data, it's about emotional intelligence in that decide phase.
And that New Coke story really highlights the danger of vanity metrics, doesn't it?
Exactly. Measurements chosen basically to make you feel good about a potentially bad decision.
Kodak and Blockbuster, they fell victim to this too, believing they should stay the course.
Yeah, even when all the signs pointed elsewhere. They were measuring things that reinforced their existing strategy, not the things that showed the market was leaving them behind.
But couldn't you argue, say for Kodak, that protecting their existing profitable film business was a rational strategy, not just fear, maybe a flawed calculation?
That's a fair point, and it's a classic dilemma for established companies. Davachi would likely argue it tips into fear when that calculation deliberately ignores overwhelming data, pointing to a fundamental, irreversible market shift.
So, prioritizing the present over the inevitable future.
Precisely. They confuse protecting a current revenue stream with the core mission of serving the evolving customer. The calculation becomes flawed when it ignores the long-term reality.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so thinking about leadership, what does this all mean for the success of Rapid? What are the key decisions leaders have to make?
Davachi points to two absolutely critical decisions for Rapid to work. First, management must consciously decide to back the strategy that comes out of the plan phase. That commitment, that decision, sets everything else in motion.
Okay, commit to the plan. What's the second?
The second one is maybe a bit counterintuitive. Management must decide to no longer decide on the implementation details.
Let go of the reins.
Exactly. Empower their teams to act autonomously within that agreed-upon strategy. Give them the what and the why, but trust them with the how. Decisions, he says, are the lifeblood of success. If you stop making them, or if the wrong people are making them at the wrong level, the business just grinds to a halt.
So if Rapid is the system, the structure, what are the underlying principles, the sort of core philosophy that makes it actually work? Davachi boils it down to 4 keys, right?
It's right. 4 fundamental keys. First one, self-awareness.
Looking in the mirror.
Exactly. Looking in the corporate mirror. Understanding your team, your real goals, your processes, products, leadership style, your customers. And even your own professional strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
It's about facing shortcomings head on.
Humility.
Yeah, and having the humility to surround yourself with smarter people who can fill your gaps. Davachi even uses these archetype inventory tools.
Archetypes. Like what view?
To help identify different personalities in an organization. Things like the mercenary, the missionary, the soldier, the influencer, the athlete, the analytical geek, and even the cynical Eeyore.
The Eeyore. We tried that years ago and it failed.
You know the type. Understanding these archetypes helps you frame feedback effectively and, minimize negative impacts from the more challenging ones.
I can definitely picture those archetypes. Okay, what's the second key?
Second is candor. Brutal honesty.
Speaking the uncomfortable truths.
Yes, having the courage to do that. Davachi shared an example of a client who was just stonewalling customers about platform glitches, completely destroying trust.
So what did he do?
He stepped in, directly addressed the issues with the customers, took all the arrows for the team, as he put it, because as an outsider, he could be objective. He says it very simply. Truth is the motor that propels the Rapid process.
Without truth, you're stalled.
Completely. If you can't have those honest conversations, you're stuck.
That sounds incredibly hard to do, though, especially when you're deep inside the organization.
It is, no question. But it's essential. Third key, customer-focused outcomes.
Always back to the customer.
Always. Relentlessly asking, why do customers actually buy from you? And maybe more importantly, how many customers are actively trying to leave.
Yeah.
It's about aligning every single action around specific, measurable outcomes that genuinely delight the customer.
Not just those internal vanity metrics.
Exactly. Not the stuff that make you look good on an internal report, but
Mm.
doesn't reflect reality for the customer.
Okay, and the final key. This one surprised me a bit. Fear as fuel.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive again, doesn't it? Fear is natural, we all feel it, but it can stop progress dead. Davachi encourages using that fear not to paralyze you, but actually to motivate more thorough planning, to anticipate and mitigate potential negatives. He wisely says, doubt is nothing but a data point.
Doubt is a data point. I like that. Use the fear constructively.
Exactly. He frames it so powerfully. Either you make yourself uncomfortable by challenging yourself, or someone else will eventually make you uncomfortable if you stand still.
That's a really potent thought. It reminds me of that personal story Davachi shared about his friend who almost gave up on pursuing a woman
Oh, yeah.
because of fear, thinking she was way out of his league.
Right.
But he pushed past that fear, and it led to 31 years of marriage and happiness. And Davachi himself admits he hears that negative voice, that self-doubt, when he's pursuing new business ideas.
We all do.
But he asks himself, why am I doing this? Reminds himself of the purpose and pushes through. It's a universal battle, isn't it?
It really is. It's about not letting that fear of the unknown dictate your actions. Instead, use it as a signal to plan more thoroughly, to prepare better, and then to actually take that leap.
So when we look back at everything, understanding why Kodak stumbled, how Blockbuster just completely missed the boat, or the systematic steps a struggling company can take to become profitable again, this rapid system really offers a powerful framework.
It really does.
It feels like a roadmap, not just to survive these turbulent times, but to actually transform.
And the beauty of it, I think, is its adaptability. Davachi notes that rapid isn't just for massive corporate turnarounds. You can apply it to your team, your specific projects, how you deal with your customers.
Or even your personal life.
Absolutely. Or even big changes in your personal life. It's fundamentally about purposeful progress. Aligning what you can do, your skills, with what you want to achieve, your desired outcomes.
Ultimately, what this deep dive really seems to show you is that decisions, they're the absolute lifeblood of success.
Couldn't agree more.
And you really do have those two choices Davachi mentioned. Make yourself uncomfortable by challenging yourself, pushing past that fear, that inertia, or just wait. Wait for someone else or some external force to make you uncomfortable because you stood still for too long.
It's a stark choice when you put it like that. So maybe a final thought for you listening right now. What one degree of change can you identify in your own work, maybe in your own life, something small perhaps, that if you tackled it with that kind of objective research and candid honesty we've been talking about, could it create that critical momentum, that first push for a much larger, more meaningful transformation down the line?